hard to know where to start. What I'm not going to do, I'll start with what I'm not going to do. I won't be talking to you a lot about what we're doing here in the UK because we are at kind of point zero on the journey of launching Charity Water here in the UK. We actually got our registered charity number on Friday after a year in the making. So we are super early in the process. So I'm not going to talk about really what we're doing here. I'm going to talk about the 10 years that Charity Water has been in operation, all headquartered out of New York, but having worked globally across the world to really build a community and to, I guess, to provide a different way of doing charity. So 10 years, without our 10th year, we've raised $210 million. And we've got a community of over 1 million supporters globally. We've got supporters in over 25 countries, which is pretty remarkable given that we only have one office in Manhattan. We seem to have hit something that has inspired people, young and old, across the world to get involved regardless of the fact that we're not operational in the countries where they live, work. What that $210 million has allowed us to do is give 6.4 million people access to clean drinking water. That's our primary focus. We're a very simple organization. We have a very simple model in terms of the work that we do. We fund water projects. So something for you guys, particularly you guys in the sector, to bear in mind. We don't have an advocacy team. We don't do influencing. We don't have policy debates. We don't engage in the things that are actually sometimes quite tricky to sell. We have a really nice, simple proposition, which is you can fund water projects through us. That's 2,739 people per day getting access to clean water as a result of what we're doing and what our community is helping us to do, one person every 30 seconds. The story of Charity Water, I think, can be told through many lenses. It can be told as a story of reinvention. Reinvention of charity and reinvention of our founder, and I'll give you a little bit of an insight into him for those of you who don't know much about Scott Harrison. It can be told as a story of technology and innovation, and obviously today that's really what the focus is, but I want to make sure that when you leave this conference, you understand that for us, technology and innovation is a means to an end. It's come across so many times. I was making notes of all the things that people said before me, and technology and innovation for us is just a means to an end. It's not really who we are. We're actually an organization of the story is about entrepreneurialism. And I think for me, that's the really important takeaway for you guys to think about when you go back to your organizations is how can you inject some spirit of entrepreneurialism into your organization, and then use technology and innovation as a means to be able to do better stuff. But I'll start in terms of the reinvention piece. This is our founder, cute American Christian kid growing up in New Jersey, has a really interesting story which I won't kind of go into detail on today, turned nightclub promoter. So lots of people have heard the story of Scott Harrison. He rebelled against his Christian upbringing and went and became a nightclub promoter in New York for 10 years. Made a huge ton of money, had a really great time, and then realized just before his 30th birthday that he was morally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, emotionally bankrupt, ethically bankrupt, and wanted to re-find his faith in humanity again. And he did. 10 years later, he's the founder and CEO of an organization that I think in the US is spending the most money on water projects every year. So they're investing, Charity Water in the US is investing more money than any other organization in clean water projects. So his story is incredibly important to who we are. It's incredibly important to this story of entrepreneurialism. And I'll come on to a little bit more as we go on. But he kind of had his, I guess, epiphany moment when he left the nightclub scene, went and spent a couple of years in Liberia, didn't work on water and sanitation projects, worked for a really cool organization called Mercy Ships, but whilst he was there, really learned about the water crisis that affected at the time a couple of million people, a couple of hundred thousands of people. So he came back really inspired to do something different with his skills, his talent, his network, which again is a constant theme that's come up today. But he had no idea about charity. Yeah, he'd never he'd never worked in the world of charity, and he wanted to solve the water crisis, but he didn't really know where to start. But what he knew was that the biggest question that he needed to answer with this idea that he had was, where does my money go? And he also really wanted to answer this question, which is, how do we inspire generosity? So he, having not been in the sector, having never kind of worked in this environment, he went to his friends and said, like, this issue of dirty water is massive, but you guys are not given to it. Like, what's stopping you giving to it? And these were the two questions, basically. Like, I don't want to be hit up with asks for money when I don't know where my money goes. And I don't want to see really horrible images of kids in need. I don't want to feel guilty about giving to charity. I want to be inspired to give to charity and to do good and to be socially impactful. So 10 years ago, he started this organization with a mission to end the water crisis, like very similar to the missions of the organizations you represent, very much focused on the issue that we are here to serve, but with a vision to reinvent charity, which I find really quite interesting. Like, if I look at most kind of annual reports for organizations, their mission and vision, they're normally kind of one and the same thing. The mission is kind of what we do, and the vision is the bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve. But here we have an organization that has a really clear, very sound purpose in terms of ending the water crisis, but wanting to do it in a different way and being very intentional about that, being very intentional about actually building a charity differently. In the States at the time, this was the kind of stat that Scott used to, I guess, really support his reason for why he wanted to reinvent charity. 42% of the American public didn't trust charities, and we've heard so much today about this issue of trust, and we know here in the UK, it's a huge issue now, and like we're kind of running around like headless chickens trying to deal with this newfound issue of charity trust in the UK, although 10 years ago it was an issue here. It was an issue in the States 10 years ago. It was as much an issue here in the UK 10 years ago. We hadn't had that media crisis. We hadn't had that frenzy that had really kind of brought it to the surface and forced organizations to look at this and think differently about their models, like the way they did their fundraising and also the transparency that they brought to the work that they were doing. Just this summer, MPC and The Guardian published an article saying that people would give an extra $665 million to charity if organizations provided information on where the money was spent. So, 10 years ago, 42% of the American public didn't trust charities, and 10 years on, here in the UK, this is what we're seeing. So this is not a new issue. It's just an issue that has gained traction and gained momentum that's now really forcing organizations to think a little bit differently. So he started the organization with a really simple idea. We'll give 100% of our money away to water projects. We'll ensure that we can tell people that 100% of their donation will go to fund a water project. And he did that by basically setting up two separate bank accounts. One that would fund the organization and one that would fund water projects. He had no idea how he was going to fill this pot of money, but he said, like, that's the proposition. This is why I've got to go in now and find a solution to funding our overheads so that we can deliver on our promise of 100% going to water projects. And this 100% proposition has, I'm sure there are people in the room who have views on this. We can talk about it at the end of the session. It has a lot of people think there's some fungibility in there. There's really not. It absolutely is very clear. 100% of public money goes to fund water projects. And the way that we do this is that we basically fundraise for our operations from a very, very specific group of people. Now, I'm going to show you a quick slide that just gives you an indication of the circles that we walk in and the community that we've built up. So the way that we fund our operations is through this product called The Well. It's a community of about 115 families, individuals, maybe one or two organizations, not many, but they're from a sector that really understands us, and they're from a sector that really worked with us from day one when we came into being 10 years ago to help us be the organization that we wanted to be, help us be the organization that Scott wanted to create. We also have a bunch of people who are in finance, business, entertainment, sports, celebrities, because we're very honest with these people about what it is that they're funding. So we're very honest about the fact that if they help us in this way, then we can leverage their money to generate more income to put onto water projects, to spend on water projects. So it's an investment for them. And they're treated as a community of people, all who are kind of on the inside track of the organization. They're founded, they're invested, they believe in everything that we do. They understand exactly how we're spending their money, whether it's on salaries or toner or office costs or flights, or, you know, they have all of that data is available to them and shared with them because they're essentially part of our team. So that's how we do the 100%. For those people who might be skeptical, it's, you know, we never suggest that we don't have overhead. We never suggest that overhead is bad. We spend a lot of money on overhead, but we're just very honest about how we fundraise for it and how we spend that money. And then we said we would prove every project. So if we're going to spend 100% of our money, of our public money on water projects, we'll prove them all. And we were really lucky to launch at a time that Google Earth had just launched as well. So completely fortuitous, I guess, in many ways. We decided that every single project we would ever deliver, we would map with GPS coordinates on Google Earth. This is what we do. So if you fund a water project or you fundraise for us via the My Charity Water platform, once that money is then implemented into a project, it will appear on our completed projects element of our site, and it will be up here. You can literally dig right in to where that money's been spent. But the other thing, and I think this is a thing about kind of, when I say I didn't want to focus wholly on technology and innovation, is because technology and innovation as an enabler requires other things. So the other part of our kind of core pillar is our brand. Like, we decided we wanted to build a brand that people aspired to. We realized that there wasn't really a brand in the charity sector that represented the Apple or the Nike of the charity sector, and we wanted to try and be that because we were trying to work with these people, these guys in the tech industry. We were focusing on millennials. We were trying to build a community of people that actually were not necessarily the typical charity target market. You know, we weren't going after the Dorothy donors or the baby boomers, you know, which at the time here in the UK, that was our focus. Baby boomer, baby boomer, baby boomer. We weren't. We were going after millennials. We were going after people who understood that social good was a really important part of their life, you know, that actually it would give them a lot of social credibility. And so we kind of went in a completely different direction and said, let's try and create a community of generous world changers. And the way we're going to do that is by building a really beautiful brand. Nick Kristof, writer for the New York Times, Washington Post, I guess inspired us at the time when he said toothpaste is peddled with far more sophistication than all of the world's life-saving causes, and that's what kind of compels us to do what we do with regards to our brand. The jerry can is a really simple icon. You know, from day one, we developed an icon that everyone could relate to with charity water. Like, this is the thing that women carry on their backs, or kids carry on their backs, or spend 6 hours walking in searing sun carrying, which like 20 pounds of water in one of these jerry cans. So this kind of theme that, again, has come through so many times today about kind of simplicity. Really, I think B at the very start talked about simple content. This is a simple icon for us that has really helped us to establish our brand with the target market that we're going after. And we design everything. So simple as it might be, like, we spend a lot of time and energy on making things look good. Like, it's an important part of who we are, and we believe that it's an important element of our brand for our community, that they want things to look good. Like, if they're supporting charity water and we want them to share, and we want them to actually invite their network to get involved, then they need to look good. And if they need to look good, they need to be looking good with us. And then the last part, which is kind of irrelevant but important in terms of who we are, is all of our work is through local partners. So Charity Water is a really lean team. We have 75 people in total at Charity Water. And all of our work in the field is delivered through partners on the ground, not our own staff. What we realized is that what we were great at was doing all of that other stuff. We were great at telling stories. We were great at actually building a brand. We were great at building a community. We didn't know this stuff, so we decided we would tell the stories of local partners rather than try and also be a implementing water project organization on the ground. So we developed relationships with our partners and obviously trust them 100% to do the work that they do, because we have our systems and processes in place to make sure that they do. But we'd tell their stories. We'd bring their stories to life for them, because that's the thing that they couldn't do. They couldn't, these guys are great at drilling wells or building hand pumps, but they're not great at actually generating the cash to do more of that work. We were good at that. So that's the background. In terms of the kind of technology and innovation part of the story, for us, technology and innovation was more than anything about building trust and really showing impact. When we talked about the blockchain earlier, it's all about this kind of transparency. We have a term that we use internally called radical transparency. It came up in the blockchain presentation. Constantly trying to be as transparent as we can to build trust in our community. Always trying to answer this question, where does my money go? And it started all those years ago, 10 years ago now, it started with a birthday party. It was the only thing that Scott knew how to do. He was a nightclub promoter, so he came back from his 2 years in Liberia and said, I need to raise some money, I don't know how to do it, so I'll throw a birthday party. Invited a bunch of his friends, charged them all to get in, generated $15,000, and then sent it to a IDP camp in Uganda. Bunch of kids here who'd never had clean water, got clean water for the first time. We tracked it with GPS coordinates, sent the reports to all of those guys that came to the party, and they were like, wow, we didn't even know that we paid $20 to get in the door, let alone actually that $20 has gone to give kids in IDP camps in Uganda access to clean water. And that gave us the confidence that this was a model that would really resonate with people. We were giving them something that they never had from any other organization, that they either had worked with or supported or hadn't bothered to support because they just didn't think they were going to get anything back from them. And it kicked off our commitment to dollars to projects, which is basically the kind of the model that we use that makes sure that every single dollar at the moment, pound in the future, gets tracked directly to a project, and that we report back on that to every one of those donors. The underlying kind of system that supports this is pretty incredible. I've never worked for an organization where every single project that we deliver is basically mapped out for us at the start of the year as a fundraiser. I can go and see that we're going to do 272 wells in this region in Malawi, 59 hand pumps in this region in India. It's a kind of an inventory system. It's like a sales sheet. I can go in and I can say, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to fundraise for that particular project. Everything is there, all entirely transparent. And we have that because of this promise. And it looks like this. So actually these are from our wall in our office. This is the completed projects part of our site. So I say you can drill into all of these and see every single project. And this is pretty much up to date. I think maybe from a week or so ago, 21,118 projects that we've ever implemented since Charity Water began, with 25 partners in 24 countries, reaching 6.4 million people. So that's all supported by how we actually develop our programs and then go and fundraise for them. But it's not just about kind of how we provide trust to our donors and prove the impact. So technology is actually servicing us, and this kind of GPS coordinate thing is servicing us in ways that are incredibly helpful to us as an organization as well. We've invested $45 million in this particular region in Ethiopia over 10 years. 5,431 projects, 1.6 million people. But in many organizations, you'd never really know kind of what that looked like. You'd never be able to visualize kind of what that kind of scale of investment actually looks like for the organization. And we can, just because we put a GPS tracker on every single project. So if we look back in 2008, here's our projects, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, oh, one too far. This is really helpful for us in terms of monitoring and evaluation. Makes it really easy for us to make sure we can go back and check that every single one of these projects is still functioning and operational. But it's also great data to share with our supporters. Part of our strategy, our program strategy, is full coverage. So rather than having a an approach whereby we want to do water projects in lots and lots of countries. We've now really focused down to about 9 countries, and our approach is to go narrow and deep. So try and get 100% coverage in regions that we're working in. This shows us that we're getting close into integrate. We're actually get to a point where actually almost 100% of the population in this particular region will have access to clean water as a result of the investment of our community. And other things, back I think 2011, we bought a drilling rig, or we crowdfunded a drilling rig. Again, so like at the time, crowdfunding was kind of new, and we crowdfunded a drilling rig, over $1 million worth of machinery, and we reported on it to everybody who gave to that drilling rig, and we fitted it with a GPS tracker, so it tweets. Every time it's drilling a rig, it will tweet that I'm drilling a borehole in this particular region in wherever. Like, just keeping people up to date with what we're doing, how their money's being spent, and making them feel, I guess, closer to the work that they're making possible. So technology for kind of what we do was really important, but also technology to build our community has been hugely important to us. So to answer the question from the beginning, how do we inspire generosity? We always knew that we didn't want to have a model that was just about one-on-one asking. Will you give £25 to help us do this project? We always knew that actually we wanted to build a network, and we wanted to use a peer-to-peer network effect in terms of our fundraising. And we utilized all those social platforms to do that. So we are one of the biggest users of many of these social platforms, 1.5 million followers on Twitter, big on Facebook, the first organization ever to use Instagram, and I think someone's probably going to correct me, but I think we've just been the first organization to use the Facebook bot to take donations via Facebook as well. So we took advantage of everything that was kind of available to us in terms of building community, all these social platforms that were out there that we were seeing that people wanted to be part of. We just took advantage of them and said, well, this is a great way to help us build community. And as I said, 25 countries around the world we now have supporters in, which I don't know of another organization that has that kind of reach outside of its national boundaries. But the thing that really allows us to do that is the fact that we focused very much on celebrating heroes, like making our fundraisers the heroes of the story. And we came up with this concept, like the birthday party where we started back in 2006, is, well, why don't we not just ask people to give, but ask them to do something active? Everyone has a birthday, and not everybody needs a birthday every year. They don't need all the stuff that comes with birthdays every year. If you remember, like, this is a common concept now here in the UK. Everyone's doing it, kind of because Charity Water brought it to the market 10 years ago. But at the time, it was pretty new. People hadn't thought of this really simple thing that we could utilize to get people to engage with charity. And from there, we saw all sorts of people kind of get involved with charity, get involved with us as a result. Tony Hawk skateboarder in the States, obviously, big profile, raises a lot of money. Same with Jack Dorsey or Angela Aarons, who sent apparently one email and raised $100,000 off the back of one email to her network for her birthday. Daniel Ek, again, all these people are WOW members as well, founder of Spotify, $45,000. Will and Jada Smith, which, we used this really well when they came on board back in the early days. They went across and they saw a project, and we used it as a way of building more community off the back of that. But not just celebrities. Like, this became a concept that was really vital for our grassroots community. This guy, Max, gave up his 7th birthday. He came from a fairly wealthy family and lived in an affluent neighborhood, raised $22,000, giving up his 7th birthday, through to kind of sweet 16s, $5,000, and right up to women, an 89-year-old grandma who gave up her birthday and said that she's turning 89 and would like to make that more possible for more people in Africa as a result. So it was a concept that broke kind of down all barriers. It wasn't for one target audience, it worked for everybody. And we really do have a community that spans all of the demographics. We have families, we have a lot of families actually. We have kids, we have philanthropists, and then we have all these guys and girls in these sectors that hadn't really ever thought about engaging philanthropically with organizations before. And we knew that actually, in order for this to really scale, we had to be the facilitators of sharing their story. We had to give them kind of something back, some kind of social capital that would help them to be the people that they want to be and to be, to represent themselves within their own network, so that they look good. Because if you think right back to where we started, Scott was a nightclub promoter. He knew how to get people to actually do stuff and pay lots of money to come into nightclubs or pay lots of money to buy bottles of champagne. And it was all about looking good. It was all about actually looking good with the people you wanted to impress. That's what kind of this concept is based on. But there's one story that really, I guess, helped us think this concept through, and which I'm pretty sure some of you in the room will be familiar with. And it's the story of Rachel Beckwith, who was a 9-year-old girl who gave up her birthday. And she set a target of $300 she wanted to raise. She fell a little short. She raised $220, I think. And about a month after her birthday, she was tragically killed in a car crash. Her story went viral off the back of that. And I'd just like, if you would allow me, to play a short video in honor of her.
It's 6 in the morning and we're about to go see some of Rachel's wells.
I am Richard. I am Rachel's grandfather. I really wish Rachel could be here today, because first of all, Rachel would think that this is probably the neatest thing she'd ever seen in her entire life.
Our community, our church, where we are from, we greatly love Rachel and continue to love her family. And I'm overwhelmed with how greatly you have honored her memory. So please receive my most deepest and heartfelt thanks. You've done us a great honor today, so thank you. Yep.
Rachel developed such a big heart from such a young age that she understood and felt the pain of others on the other side of the world. To give up her birthday present so that other children can improve their lives is the most beautiful gift a person can give.
The reason I wanted to show that is because it touches on so much about what our brand is about. So of course it was a story to tell you about how we've created a community of generous world changers, but how we tell our stories have been really important to us from day one as well. And we've always used video incredibly powerfully since day one to try and tell some of these complex stories sometimes in the most simple and most beautiful way to get the impact that we're looking for. And the campaign went beyond birthdays. So people give up their birthdays, of course, but then people started doing things that we were all really familiar with. As fundraisers, people have been doing stuff like this for years and years and years. But this guy is like a really interesting one. Rather than going and climbing a mountain or jumping out of an aeroplane, he listened to Nickelback for 168 hours straight in his sleep. You know, didn't just had it playing. He raised $36,000 off the back of it. This guy didn't buy a wedding ring for his wife, bought a wow instead. Cosette, she paints and sells her pictures. At 4 years old, raised $5,000. Children eating rice and beans. Lula Grace here, actually in the UK, wrote a book, sold it to people and raised $4,000. And we celebrate these people as much as we possibly can. So some of you may remember a few years ago on our 5th birthday, we celebrated as many of our fundraisers as we could with personalized thank you videos. The whole staff got behind it. And we shared those with both them and also our community more broadly. But in our office, every single day, we have our supporters represented around the room. So they're on screens telling their stories about what it is that makes them give to Charity Water and why they support in the way that they do. So we've always used technology to create empathy. We've done lots of live drills. We've taken communities to see the work that they've put into practice. And we've famously, back in about 2012, we did a live drill in Central African Republic, and it failed. And we broadcast it, and we told people that actually sometimes these things don't work. And that helped our community understand that these projects are not always easy to implement, but they forgave us for the fact that we drilled a well that didn't work. We went back and drilled another one, and they were super, super happy that we shared that experience with them. We've used it to tell really simple stories. So, like, the story of dirty water here, like, people do this. Like, people can say how many diseases are in the water that kids drink, but what about if you show it like this? We put water under a microscope and then shared this with people. It's so much more powerful than showing them that picture of the diseases, in the water. This was water that this little kid was drinking. And more recently, we did VR. So I think we were probably before UNICEF, before Amnesty. I might be wrong. We shot our own VR film 2 years ago. I have it here. If anyone wants to go later, you can come and watch. It's a 7-minute story of this girl, Salem, who goes from having no access to clean water to when the drilling rigs roll in. And it brings these moments of joy, like pure, unadulterated joy, to life for people in a way that allows them to experience without getting on a plane and traveling to Ethiopia. We then took it back to them and showed them. So this was her, seeing her own VR film in action. So we're constantly trying to bridge the gap between our beneficiaries and our supporters. She said it was beautiful. And then we take it to places where we can obviously build that empathy from our community. This was our gala last year in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. 450 people put these headsets on. They all watched the film, and they gave $2.5 million off the back of it. We've taken it to the streets of New York, to film festivals, and we're constantly, like, this was 2 years ago we did this. Now it's what is the next thing? We're using technology to help us with our sustainability program. This is the pump that is most commonly used in Africa. We partnered with Google to develop a sensor for it, which allows us to track the amount of water that's being pumped out of that well. So we can now see on all the wells that has a sensor how much water is being pumped. So we can go back to Rachel's wells in Ethiopia, all those wells, and we can show her here the water that's being pumped from her wells every single day. We can drill in and we can see what are the most important parts of the day for people. When do they access clean water? We can see that there's a massive spike at this time of the day and another spike again at the other end of the day. It's kind of 6 o'clock in the evening, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. This really helps us with thinking through, like, what do we do to make sure that these wells keep working for years and years to come? It also allows us to, again, visualize that in a way that's really powerful for our supporters. We can take that data and say, this is how many bottles of water you're funding every single day for this community. So I said at the start that this was a story of entrepreneurialism. It started, like any startup does, in a lounge of a friend. It's all about our community. Our technology community was really important to us in terms of how we got going. And the thing about Charity Wars is that we look and we act very differently. We never come and talk at these conferences. I'd be honest with you, we've never spoken at a charity conference. We go and speak at Web Summit or Founders Forum or Le Web. Like we walk in the circles of the network that we are working with. Like that's how we spend our time. We don't have a team that looks like most typical charity organizations. We have an engineering team. We have a team of on-site engineers who do all of our web build, all of our technical build. And we have a product team. Like not many organizations in the non-profit sector have a product team. And we have our own creative. We do everything in-house. We don't use outside agencies. Our office looks like this, rather than many of the offices that you guys might work in. We're kitted out for working virtually, especially important now that I'm here in the UK as the only person. And we have these screens adorning every single wall of our office, so we're monitoring every single stat in terms of our web presence and our social profiles every second of every day. To make sure that the whole staff are keeping up to date with what's happening in our world. But we also have kind of creative partnerships that are really important to us that help to support this kind of focus on technology and innovation. Like technology and innovation doesn't exist in a vacuum for us. We have partnerships with the likes of Saks Fifth Avenue, raised £700,000. The Macallan, a whiskey that we were given to be auctioned off, and we thought this is never going to raise any money. It raised £605,000 because we thought creatively about a different kind of partnership. Depeche Mode raised $1.4 million for us. PewDiePie, we talked about gaming earlier. PewDiePie is a big gamer. He's raised over $600,000 for us, but in one campaign he raised $446,000 because he reached out to his community with a charity water campaign, and they gave in their droves. But we have, I think, the thing that's really important, a real culture of caring in our organization. This idea that we invite generosity. We don't ask for generosity. If you're familiar with any of our campaigns, we never really make a direct ask to people. We invite people to be generous, and then we ask for help. Where we need help with things, we go to our community and we say, help us figure out this problem. Help us do something differently, so that we can kind of achieve our next stage of growth or achieve the next thing that we want to do. We have values like every other organization, and the thing that I think is really important is the way these values are played out. So looking ahead, we've solved like 1% of the problem. The problem of dirty water affects 663 million people. We've done 6.4 million people, so we've got a long way to go. We're happy with what we've achieved. We're registering here in the UK right now, as I said. there's a lot for us to learn from the charity sector. Like we don't have a model of regular giving. Yeah, like you guys will all know the importance of a sustainable source of income. We don't really have that because we're constantly re-inspiring new sources of support every year. So we're thinking about different ways to build our revenue in a sustainable way. So I guess the kind of where we're at is we're moving from adolescence to adulthood. We're at that 10-year mark. We've been ahead of the curve a little bit, for sure, for the first 10 years, but that's not to say we're going to stay there. We've got a huge challenge ahead of us to make sure that we continue to be innovative, we continue to grow our community, and we don't have all the answers. Hopefully we can take some answers from this community as well, as we start to actually play a little bit more in the non-profit field. So, sorry, I know I ran over, but thank you for listening.